got this Mercedes up on the lift, and it's got a problem. When you hit the brakes, going down the road at 40, 50 miles an hour, it wants to dive to the right. So I decided to go ahead and pull off the front wheels and take a look at this. It usually means one caliper is grabbing harder than the other one. So I think if it's going to the right, that means this brake's probably working okay. But I wanted to look at this first. First thing I noticed is it just spins freely after braking. So it's not sticking. This is a recently replaced caliper. It has new pads, new brake disc. I don't see anything here. Now let's go over to the left side. So the first thing I noticed here was the wheel is sticking a little bit on the pad, and then it frees up, it will move, but it's not spinning freely like the right side. And then I took my hand and I wiped here. I said, what? Did somebody put grease? Too much brake pad grease on this? Going around to the back side of the caliper here, this doesn't look good right in here. See that? That's not brake pad grease. That's brake fluid. Look down here. So this thing's leaking fluid and causing the pads to gum up, and this brake is not working effectively, and that's why the car pulls off to the right side under heavy braking. So we're going to have to remove this here and see what's going on. This caliper has been leaking brake fluid out of a couple of these pistons. And look, this is a recently replaced, rebuilt brake caliper. Probably replaced 2,000 miles ago, according to the maintenance records. So rather than mess around with this, I'm just going to get another caliper, because if it's leaking and I try to fix it and it leaks again, I'm not going to be too happy. But you can see what happens when these calipers start leaking fluid. Look what they do to the pads. They just gum up the pads. Look at that. And so it becomes super slick. Now you recall the reason I did this inspection was the car was pulling to the right under heavy braking. Well, that's obvious. This wheel isn't braking very well. The other one's braking very well, so it wants to pull the car off to the right. The reason I decided to film this, even though there's lots of videos about brakes on YouTube, is I want to alert you to a couple things. Number one, if you feel your brakes are pulling when you hit the brakes hard, either to the right or left, have it checked out right away or check it out yourself. Don't just ignore it, because this could get really unsafe after a while. The other thing is, if you see brake fluid going down in your reservoir and you're adding brake fluid, this is probably the reason why. So either one of those situations, you need to check them out. Do not ignore them. Now, look at the fun we're going to have here. We're going to have to totally clean up this brake disc. There's no wear in this at all. We'll get this all cleaned up. We'll get that new caliper, new pads on, and we'll be back on the road. I thought that was going to be the end of the video, but we cleaned up this rotor. We actually cleaned it up with alcohol. And there's some rust spots in it. Of course, that's from the car sitting with that brake fluid between the edge of the pad and the rotor. And I thought, oh, well, let's go ahead and use this. And then we put it on. My sidekick says, hey, Ken, I don't think this thing's true. Well, I could have gone back in the tool room and brought out my gauge, but I just do it the quick and dirty method. Watch this. I'm going to put a screwdriver here, lock it down. See, it's a little bit out of round. So this is kind of a judgment call. I think I'm going to change the brake disc too. I won't have to deal with this again. But this gives you a good idea. I've never actually seen a rotor get, we call it potato chipped by a brake fluid leaking out of the caliper, but who knows why. But I'm just going to replace this brake disc and be done with it.